Hello everybody and welcome back to another tips from a noob for the AH-64D Apache for DCS World. And today I thought I'd show you guys the things that I've figured out and what I find to be easiest about landing the Apache. So we're approaching the airbase here, and I'm going to walk you guys through how I bring this little lady down. Okay guys, so as always, this is not meant as a tutorial. This is just what I have found that works for me and has greatly enhanced my experiences with flying the Apache. So we're just on our way back from a previous video doing the gun run, and I'm going to bring the control scheme back up here. Remember that the center white diamond is the cyclic, the bottom diamond is the anti-torque pedal, and the one on the far left is the collective, and the red X's indicate trim position. So I'm going to put us into a transition mode. You can tell you're in transition with the hashed lines there, and we now have our flight path indicator, which is that circle with the 3 wings on it. For anyone who doesn't know, the VVI's purpose is to tell you where the aircraft is going to end up if you don't make any control changes. So it's a good way to determine where your target is as far as your landing spot. Now what I like to do here is I like to get myself, a little bit under 500 feet, 400, 500 feet, somewhere around that area. Remember, we have our vertical velocity indicator over here in hundreds of feet, 100 feet, 200 feet, 300, etc. And like in this case, we're climbing at almost 100 feet per minute. And you just sort of have to watch this diamond. It's going to be real important to monitor that as you're on your approach. I like to get down to about 50 knots, and then when I'm about a quarter of a mile away from my spot here, I'm going to bring the altitude down to about 200 feet, give or take. And again, there's no book about this. This is just how I've found is easiest to do it. Keep monitoring the trim. You're going to find that I'm trimming the aircraft constantly, and I'll try to call it out, but it's become such second nature at this point. Notice my descent rate, keeping it right around 200 feet per minute, keeping that forward momentum. Now I'm going to keep tipping the nose back, and then as I tip the nose back, I'm reducing collective because I still want to be descending, but I'm doing it slowly, until you get real comfortable with it. Make those changes slowly, and again, trimming again. Like seriously, I'm going to be trimming like crazy. Every couple seconds typically I'm trimming. You don't want to get descending too fast. If you get too slow on the forward momentum and descend too fast, you'll end up in VRS, which is vertical ring state, which a very layman's term of what that is, basically meaning that the aircraft is falling faster than the lift that's being generated by the rotors, okay, or the downward thrust, I guess, if you will. Alright, so where is our... I'm trying to remember where our hangar is. Oh, we're still in the back. That's why. Okay. So I'm approaching... We're going way back over there by those buildings there in the back. So at this point, I'm going to maintain forward momentum right about where we're at. Trimming again. Sort of holding my altitude for now. I like to get right about 50 knots as I get in close, which we're getting close. So I like to hold about 50. 50 knots seems to be a real comfortable way to fly. It doesn't require a ton of anti-torque, and yet you have plenty of time to plan your approach here. And then reducing the speed is just as easy. And again, constantly feathering that collective in to maintain sync rate or lack thereof, depending on what you're doing. And I think it's... I thought that's where we took off from. Huh. You guys ever been lost in an Apache? Oh, there it is. It's over there. Okay. Okay, I'm like, dude. Alright, so I descended a little fast because I thought that was my landing spot, but it's actually over there in the corner. So again, no biggie. Now we're climbing a bit, so I'm just going to hold right about where we're at. And again, if you notice, not putting a ton of work into the collective or the cyclic, just sort of letting it cruise. And you can see just a nice chill approach. And right in front of that hangar there, that's what we're looking for. So at this point now, I'm going to start turning the aircraft towards my target area. And what I like to do is sort of come in from the back here. So I'm going to start reducing my altitude and reducing my forward speed. Remember, nose back as you're reducing the collective, but don't let your sink rate fall too much. And make sure you add collective if you start to fall too fast. Continuously trimming, more collective. Oh, and I'm getting too far back, and there it is. So I started descending way too fast. So I'm adding that collective back, and you want to catch that real quick. Real quick. Especially when you're down low like this. So there's my desired landing spot. I want to continue to arrest my forward momentum. Watching that descent rate. And you can do it in bursts. You can let it fall for a second, but just be really ready to catch back up. And now there's our flight path indicator coming down towards my landing zone. What's funny is I actually do this better when I'm not talking about it. Still trying to slow the aircraft down. Now I'm not so much watching anything other than my descent rate and my forward momentum now. I'm picking a spot right on the ground where I want to be. Bringing that descent rate back up. There we go. And now, let's say I want to go over there. More trim. Everything's real gentle at this point. 10 feet. And at this point, this is where I want it to be. And once you get close enough, there we are. Tail wheel down first. And wheel brakes. Now, it's a hell of a lot harder to talk about it while you're doing it. I'm going to be honest with you guys. It's really difficult to do that. Because then you're constantly second guessing with yourself. You're trying to call out the things that you're doing, calling out things to look at when normally it's just a constant mental process. The biggest thing that I'm going to give you guys tips here, if I were to sum this up, give yourself about a quarter of a mile from your desired landing location. Get down to about 400 feet. Start coming down slowly. Get into around 50 knots. As you saw, 50 knots, it's pretty easy to at least stop the forward momentum at that point. But remember, every time when you start getting slow like that and you start reducing that forward momentum, your sink rate is going to increase dramatically. So you really got to be on the ball with that collective and make sure that you don't let this fall. If you let it get to right about 500 feet or more with very little forward momentum, you may find yourself in a spot where you can't recover it. But I'm still constantly trimming, trim. I was hitting the trim button until, right down to about 10 feet. I was still hitting that trim button. As you start noticing that you're really fighting the stick, trim it. You start noticing you're fighting the stick again, trim it. Really keep the workload off you, because the more trim that you keep tapping and adding into the aircraft, the easier it is to keep it under control, because it's requiring less jittering from you on the cyclic. So that's just my tips. I hope that helps. And the other cool thing about doing that is it makes it a bit easier to bring it back up. So if I wanted to pick back up at this point, add that torque. Say I wanted to move it over. You're going to find that if you've been trimming it the whole way down, you have a ton of control of this helicopter. So we could bring it around. We could put it almost into a hover. It's just significantly easier to control it if you've been staying on that trim wheel, okay? If you don't stay on the trim and you try to do everything by hand, then it's just nasty the whole way down, and then if you want to pick back up again, it fights you even more, right? So from here, we can just bring it around, and if we wanted to, again, trimming. Like, I'm constantly on the trim. I'm in the trim a ton when I'm in transition. I'm in the trim a ton when I'm coming down in for landing. And the more you trim it, it just makes it easier and easier and easier to fly. But anyway, that is my little tutorial with the AH-64 Apache landing. I hope you guys learned something, maybe at least caught a couple tips that you might try to make your cruising experience a bit easier. The other thing that I will tell you is something that I am not clearly doing is try to set your environment to no wind when you're learning. I keep trying to remember to turn my wind off, but I keep forgetting. It really does make it a lot easier, guys. So I mean, look how much we're crabbing. This is level flight here. So it's the wind's pretty intense, and I've noticed that it doesn't take much wind to really cause a problem. I was flying with a buddy earlier, and it was only at 6 knots, and man, it had that helicopter under control. I mean, this is some pretty intense. Look at the slip ball here. We're crabbing pretty hard. So set yourselves up with no wind as well if you're doing your own missions. It'll make your lives a bit easier and a bit less stressful while you're learning. As always, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please be sure to hit that like and subscribe and comment down below if there's any tips and tricks that you guys have I would love to try out. And by all means, please stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you in the next one.